And I like to say good morning, everyone, again, combined with the upcoming session in around an hour, Remarkable Woman in AI. The gender diversity is clearly represented in today's summit. And I just thought that I would mention that because the next presentation here is literally all women. And I am the only person here on this call who is actually, a man, and I am not in the VC business. So I'm welcome everybody. We have unfortunately one person who couldn't make it, but with that, I see I do see everybody here on the call. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm joined by four very well respected female venture capital investors who provided us some insights about the current state of the market. So for example, how does a hype cycle influence investment decisions? What are the criteria of investors around value creation, applied AI, generative AI, or blockchain applications? These are just some of the topics we would like to explore today. Before we dive deeper into the questions and allow the audience to ask questions at the very end, I would like to ask each one of the speakers to introduce themselves and tell us about your background, your firm, and the current activities, and so on and so on. So let me start with Rashmi Gopinath, the general partner at B Capital. Please, Rashmi, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Thomas, and really nice to meet everyone. Apologies, I couldn't be there in person, but excited to be talking about this topic of AI. Quick introduction, I'm a general partner at B Capital. We're a global growth stage equity firm, typically investing in Series B through late stages across different sectors in enterprise software. We've been around since 2016, it's about 7 years now. 160 portfolio companies, about 6.5 billion assets under management. Our definition of enterprise is quite broad. We look at investing across different topics like cloud infrastructure, cyber, DevOps, data infrastructure, AI, and application software, as well as vertical areas like healthcare, fintech, supply chain, climate, logistics. So fairly broad mandate on the enterprise B2B side. And our focus is global. So we have portfolio companies across North America, LATAM, Europe, Asia, and Israel. We have a strong partnership with the Boston Consulting Group, who we partner with quite closely on the post-investment side to provide value to our portfolio companies through their network. Quick background on myself, I've been at B Capital for about 4 years now. Prior to this was at Microsoft Ventures and Intel Capital. Before that, I've been on the investing side since 2011. And then prior to that was on the operating side, where I've built products for Oracle and GE. And then I was at 2 startups. One was a cloud infrastructure startup that brought virtualization to big data deployments, ran most of the go-to-market teams there. And then was at a NoSQL database startup in the Valley called Couchbase. Again, on the business development team there. Really excited to talk about generative AI. We've been spending a lot of time in this space, and we believe it's one of the important technology innovations that has truly the ability to change the way we work and live.
Thank you, Rashmi. This was very insightful. Appreciate it. So next up, I would like to invite Eva Maria Olbers, the operating partner at Point72 Ventures. Thanks for joining us today. And I think you are calling in from remote, right? You are in Germany right now, but based here.
Yes, that's correct. No, I'm currently dialing in from Germany.
Welcome. Stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Thomas, and thanks so much for organizing and for hosting and having me in today's panel discussion. So my name is Eva Maria Olbers. I'm an operating partner at Point72 Ventures. Our fund focuses on a number of different verticals, including enterprise tech, fintech, and of course, as well, deep tech and AI, which is what my team focuses on. Our investment mandate is fairly stage agnostic. So we do invest in everything from seed stage all the way to growth stage. So we try to be partners for our portcos along the journey of growth, so to speak. And Point72 Ventures is affiliated to the hedge fund Point72, which some may be familiar with, which is led by Steve Cohen. I have been with the firm for about 4 years now, and my role is a little bit more focused on the post-investment side of the venture capital world. So specifically, I work with AI companies and deep tech companies after investment to help them grow, to help connect them to resources, and make sure that they're as successful as they can be. A little bit on my own personal background. So I started my career at the Boston Consulting Group, actually back in Germany here. And then very quickly fell in love with AI and machine learning. So joined a high growth machine learning company in the education space and led business development there for some years. Then I was at the Microsoft Ventures Accelerator in London before coming over here to Silicon Valley, where I joined Point72 Ventures. Generative AI, AI in general, as Rashmi has said, is obviously an incredibly exciting topic. Something that I think all of us have heard more and more about, and we're all still trying to figure it out. So I'm very excited for today's discussion and to also learn from my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva Maria, for sharing your experience, and hope you're coming back soon, right? Next up, I would like to invite Radhika Liengar, founding partner at StarChain Ventures. Welcome to this group of incredible women. And Radhika, Ileana, the stage is yours. Tongue breaker.
Thanks, Thomas. Great to be here. Great to be organizing the summit as well with you and collaborating on many things. So I'm Radhika Iyengar. I'm a founding partner at StarChain Ventures. We are a venture studio based here in Silicon Valley. We've been around. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary. So it's been very exciting 5 years operating in the space of Web3 and specifically in combination with other technologies like AI or IoT and others. We are very much, our thesis is really born out of the book that we co-authored, which was Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived. And it's really talking about the many, many use cases that utilize the full technology stack, which of course for us has Web3 as a foundational underpinning. But it really is at the convergence of technologies that we focus on. We are very much focusing on many different areas. Enterprise use cases is really where we are focused on. And that ranges from healthcare to fintech to supply chain logistics to cybersecurity and others. And so really our thesis is how can we create a much more impactful world globally, using these technologies to create the greatest amount of impact that we can have. So this is very much a part of our thesis, is that it's people, planet, and technology. Technologies being the great enabler that facilitates all of that. For me personally, I'm a top 100 women of the future. I'm a TEDx speaker, speak prolifically on this subject and keynoted so many of the conferences worldwide. And very much sharing my passion for this technology as a transformative, game-changing set of the tools that we have in this technology stack. And I'll just add that, the main thesis here for me personally is that, when we go through different cycles, I've certainly seen so many of the tech cycles. I started my life in semiconductors at the advent of something called the internet. So for me, it feels a little bit like a deja vu. We are at another big inflection point in technology. That's very, very exciting to see all of these technologies combined. So pleasure to be here with all of you and looking forward to our panel discussion.
Thank you, Radhika, very much for sharing. And by the way, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning for joining me at the opening speech. And you have a big role tomorrow with your own stage and keynote towards the end of the day, because you're so heavily into Web3. So looking forward to meeting you and seeing you in person tomorrow in the studio. With that, last but not least, I'd like to invite Yvonne Lutsch, investment principal at Bosch Ventures. And she was so kind to join me here physically in the studio. Yvonne, thank you very much for coming, and the stage is yours.
Thanks for the invitation, Thomas. So at least you're not alone.
Yeah, thank you.
On the green screen here. My name is Yvonne Lund. I'm an investor at Bosch Ventures, and we are the corporate venture capital arm of the Bosch Corporation. We do invest kind of stage agnostic, but rather on the early side in startups across the world. We have offices in Silicon Valley, in Boston, in Germany, in Israel, and in China. And these are the geographies we are active in. We are very much structured like a financial VC. That means we invest with a very strong financial return focus, but of course we want to see some strategic relevance to the Bosch Corporation. And if you know the Bosch Corporation, we are international, but also very, very broad in terms of areas where Bosch is active. This is mobility, building technology, consumer goods, and also industrial technology. So these are the areas we are principally interested in. But we very much invest in deep tech, in technologies that are changing the paradigm, like generative AI. I mean, this is everywhere, and we are talking about generative AI for sure during this discussion here. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Germany. Apparently, I have been with the Bosch Corporation for more than 21 years now. My first half of my life at Bosch was in very operational roles in the semiconductor space mostly. And now for almost 6 years, I'm an investor here in US.
Yvonne, thank you very much. And to all of you here, so we have for all of you to provide a rich overview of your experience and background. So we have a list of questions prepared, and I will get right into it. And I would actually like to combine the first 2 questions if I can. So the first one is, what are some of the opportunities that excites you in AI this year and in the next 3 years? The second one, and you can freely combine them, is what are some of the challenges you see, especially as an investor in AI, but also Web3, if it's applicable to you? Maybe I give the floor first to Yvonne, please.
Yeah, so first question, things we are excited about. Of course, we are all excited about generative AI. I mean, almost everyone tried ChatGPT or tried to generate some images, and you see very quickly, you know, how this is very exciting because all of a sudden things happen that were not possible in the past. But of course, it's important to see what are the implications for Bosch, for the corporation, for, you know, real world industrial use cases, enterprise use cases. And I see with AI, and particularly with large language models, with generative AI, that business operations can be improved a lot. The Bosch Corporation can finally really make use of all the data the enterprise collected in the last years. And you can much, much more easily dig into this data. You ask the data questions with generative AI, and it gives you good answers on how business processes are running, what are the insights, and how you can improve processes. That's what I see like in the short term. In the next 3 years, I was thinking about it. There's one particular topic I'm interested about, at least to say, because as a physicist by training, you know, I love to read science fiction. And actually, I think that generative AI has a large influence in how we will build and how robots will be deployed in the near future, because with generative AI, you can teach robots new tasks, ubiquitous tasks, much, much easier. And there are a lot of companies recently, some of them were around for a while already, like Boston Dynamics, but there are new robotics companies coming up, and they show with the help of generative AI how fast these robots can learn. And these robots can help humans with doing very tedious, hard for your body, labor, work, intensive tasks. And I think that's an area that will definitely become much, much bigger in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Next, maybe I can invite Rashmi to the conversation. Your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll combine both your challenges question as well as what we see as opportunities that we're excited about. So we actually polled a number of CXOs in terms of what are their top priorities with AI and generative AI, and what are some of the challenges that they're seeing. And I would say the challenges kind of fall into 3 buckets, and those 3 buckets then tie into the areas that we're excited about. The first one is just around the complexity and how do you even get started. Now, many of us who've tried the ChatGPT version of OpenAI or a DALL-E version are blown away by how simple it is to just ask a question and then you get the response that you need. But as an enterprise, if you're trying to work with an open source foundational model, train it very specifically for the enterprise data that you have, make sure all of your corner cases are well planned and well adjusted for, so that the outputs are going to be more consistent and accurate. It's actually pretty tough to get going. And you need a fair degree of technical expertise to be able to put all those pieces in place to create a contextual model that is going to be applicable for your enterprise use case. And so in tandem with that, the area that we're excited about is the platform or the ops capability around the generative AI infrastructure, which can help enterprises get up and running pretty quickly. These can provide the right infrastructure for them to be able to test out different open source models or even the closed source foundational models, be able to bring their data sets to it, apply different training data sets to create the models that will generate accurate, consistent results, with getting that insight on how much does it cost for them to run these at scale. So that I would say is one area, and the ops side can be everything from fine-tuning models to putting together the data infrastructure to apply access control policies to the existing data sets to bring into these, to observability of models, version controlling of both the data sets and the models themselves. So a lot to kind of pack in that ops side. The second key challenge that we hear quite frequently is the challenge around security and data privacy and governance, where I think the key concern that most enterprises have is you don't want to upload your data sets into a black box where you don't know how that data is going to be used. And so having control on the training data, which in many cases is pretty much their competitive moat, is highly critical for them, as well as the security of the AI models, where there's again a high risk of injection risks at the prompt side or at the data side, hallucinations that we've seen many of these models create, because a key challenge again with the foundational models is they're trained on freely available internet data. And if you use that to ask a very specific question for an enterprise use case, you might get an answer which is not accurate. And so there's a number of startups that we're seeing that are helping address that security, data privacy, model hallucination challenges. And so that's something that we're excited about, where we're spending a lot of time in. And then the third piece is around the compute infrastructure side, where we're all quite familiar with the supply challenges with GPUs, especially for training these large language models, and how the cost can spiral up pretty quickly. And that is also a key concern that many enterprises have, which is nobody has a free-for-all budget where you can just allocate millions of dollars into an experimentation project. And so figuring out how do we bring some of these costs under control? And that can mean a different compute infrastructure architecture, which maybe uses a combination of CPUs or GPUs, or applying some sort of an acceleration layer on top of the existing compute infrastructure to make it more feasible to run these training workloads at a much cost-effective manner. And so to the emergence of specialized GPU clouds that we're also seeing. So again, a lot of innovation within that compute infrastructure layer, which we're also quite excited about. So that hopefully addresses both parts of your questions.
It does. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, maybe Eva Maria, give me your thoughts, or give us your thoughts, and also maybe bring in the different perspectives of what's needed, what's required, what the Europeans are looking for, and also how that applies to the North American market. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think in terms of opportunities and what excites me personally, I think there's a lot, when we talk about generative AI, we often think about generative text, but there's also generative video, there's generative voice. So we have actually seen a lot of really interesting companies emerge, startups emerge in those different spaces within the generative AI space. So personally, I think there's a lot that we can look forward to and exciting innovations that we can see. In terms of actual industries, so I think artificial intelligence has tremendous potential in the healthcare space. We heard a little bit about that earlier today. Customer service space, especially for Gen AI, is again a lot of developments that we see. And of course, supply chain as well, especially given the recent COVID-19 pandemic that has shown certain shortcomings, and how can we leverage AI to overcome those. And another opportunity that really excites me is the low and no code AI, which will increasingly open up access to different players within the market with potentially less sophistication in the coding space to access and develop on top of open applications as well. In terms of challenges, and I'm trying to address this question a little bit from an investor's perspective, the market is a little bit overcrowded, right? As with any hype that comes, suddenly we see so many Gen AI startups out there, and it's particularly challenging to discern between what are actual Gen AI startups and which ones potentially are not. So I'm not sure if my fellow panelists have come across similar challenges, but there's a lot of overflooding in the market, and some very careful differentiation is needed. I also think there are some challenges for some of those Gen AI startups to find early product market fit. AI startups often struggle with that because it's a little bit harder to show traction very early on. There is a lot of in-depth development that happens at the beginning. So not really a barrier, just something to be aware of that is a hurdle as these companies start and continue to grow. And then the last challenge I wanted to mention, and I think Thomas, to your point about European versus American market, I think we need a lot more focus on actual ethical applications of Gen AI and AI. I think Europe has done a tremendous job looking at ethics, making sure that there is less data bias, making sure that there is an adequate amount of regulation. And the US is also now very much looking into that space and kind of catching up when it comes to that space. So I think, again, there's opportunities here. There are some differences on both sides of the Atlantic. And then, of course, both countries or continents have different types of innovation in terms of radical versus incremental, for instance. And they also have different sectors that they specialize in: semiconductor space, automotive space, for example. Germany is very strong in. And as a result of that, we see a lot of AI and Gen AI applications that are really emerging in that space as well. So lots of other thoughts, but I'll quickly stop here. Those are some of the main opportunities and also challenges that I currently observe.
Great. Thank you, Eva Maria. Appreciate it. So before I go to Radhika, I have a question. This morning, you may have seen the session with the famous robot, Desi. And she had this 3D perceptual camera on her chest, which she needs to explore the environment that she is moving in. And what I liked at that presentation and the technologies, it's a combination of Web3, blockchain, as well as AI, and obviously robotics. Now, Yvonne, you mentioned earlier about robotics. They are very interesting use cases. I personally must say I'm a huge favor in looking in AI, particularly in the applied AI arena, not just generative AI, which is the current hype right now because ChatGPT is what is in everybody's mind. And the reason why I'm setting the stage is I know very well that Radiga is very, very much into the combination of the two things. There is AI, and then there is the AI going into the space of Web3. And then there's also the real use cases that are kind of in between. So maybe you can address, based on your answers, these kind of the combination of all of that. And if I am a startup person now listening to this conversation, what is it? What should I do? What should I look into that actually every one of you would actually take my phone call and listen to my pitch?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Right.
I'll just say this, absolutely. I mean, I think our focus is very much at the convergence of Web3 plus other technologies. So AI, IoT, robotics, all of the above really, because first of all, I think we approach it much to align with Rashmi, for example, very enterprise sort of lens on this. That's really where we're seeing the early use cases happening for the combination of Web3 and AI. And when I say Web3, I mean, people, you should listen to the keynote, by the way, tomorrow that we're giving on this topic, which is all about enterprise use cases in Web3 and AI. But really, it's not just the crypto conversation. Everybody just kind of conflates the two and say Web3 is only crypto. Crypto is just an application. So we're really focusing on the foundational technologies, much like the internet is a foundational technology, and then you have other things that you can do with it. But more importantly, there are things that Web 2 for us just fails, abysmally at, which is, secure source of truth. So where does the data come from? What you're doing with it that is unalterable or not tamperable or non-hackable. These are things that are incredibly, incredibly important. So to echo what Rashmi said, which is you're looking at critical infrastructure, you're looking at foundational sort of layers, you're looking at really having the right enablement tools right at the foundation so that you can then build very quickly on top of that. But what is missing in a lot of the Web 2 applications of AI that we're seeing is it's just not intelligent enough. So I often talk about, rather provocatively, is saying we need to put the big I back into AI. It feels very much like a small I to me and to us at StarChain Ventures. What we're looking for is next generation tools that really take into account the responsible use of this technology. We can't just build things in a vacuum and expect that it's going to have the intended consequences. So a lot of the caveats that we're seeing, the challenges that we're seeing, whether it's hallucination, whether it's LLMs that are too narrow, that are biased, all of those things can be solved when you have a decentralized infrastructure at the bottom layer. And I'm going to give credit to Janet Adams, who had a brilliant keynote this morning, talking about that future that we can see with AI that does take care of many of these inconsistencies and holes when it comes to how we treat data. So the entire data story really has to be rethought. If we're building on a foundation that is flawed, the outcome is also going to be flawed. It is very much garbage in is garbage out. So that's kind of what we're focusing on, is what can we build today that really addresses tomorrow? We are venture operators, to be clear. So we are working very actively with our portcos and our partners to build these solutions. We are technologists ourselves, so we're very, very keenly focused on how do we build sustainable, responsible solutions for tomorrow that are going to address large global challenges. And I think that, as venture operators, what we're looking for is those collaborative opportunities with any host of ecosystem partners to really deliver the promise of what can be tomorrow. So if you listen to Janet's keynote this morning, she talked about current LLMs and ChatGPT, for example, being very rudimentary because it's just trying to statistically guess the right next word or the right next response. That's really not what we need for the future. What we need for the future is artificial general intelligence, and a little bit more intelligence part of it is really what we're focused on. But that has to be based on the decentralized construct. And so for us, our thesis is very much centered around how decentralized everything really opens up the field for more people to participate so that we don't end up with the bias that we have clearly available today. I don't know if any of you have looked at the book by Joy Buolamwini called Unmasking AI. If you haven't, take a look at it. It really talks about some of these very, very critical foundational problems. We need a diverse set of people working on these solutions. We can't have the same group of people, developing things over and over. So what we look at from a venture studio perspective is how can we collaborate with diverse founders globally to really reimagine and rethink the world that we can see and really take care of some of these failings from a foundational level. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is, it's really important to, I think, have that secure source of truth, like I said. So the entire layer has to be secure from beginning to end. Otherwise, we do end up with gaps. And these gaps are going to lead at the most benign level to hallucinations, but at a more egregious level can have very severe unintended consequences. So with the power of amazing technologies, we have to be much more thoughtful and responsible of how we're actually implementing this technology. The kinds of solutions, the kinds of companies that we are partnering with, that we are really developing solutions with, are really taking into account all of the corrections, if you will, that we need to have in place so that we can end up at the right place in the future and not say, wow, what just happened here? We are at a very, very unique and exciting point in time. And it is incredibly important to have that responsible, ethical, thoughtful approach to technology. I sit on the task force called the Blockchain Working Group that advises Governor Newsom and California State Legislature on the applications and implications of this technology. And it is, a really important role that we played back in 2019 and 2020, looking and really presenting our findings and our conclusions of where California, with 40 million residents, ought to look at. So this is not about technology for the few, it's technology for the many. But we have to make sure that everything is safeguarded. Data privacy, security, these are things that are not add-ons. These are foundational sorts of layers. And so for us, our thesis is very much rooted that it's going to be a decentralized everything that is going to be the construct for the future, for the present and for the future. I hope that addresses some of the things that you're thinking about, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So looking back, and I like to start with Yvonne, because you're also representing a giant corporation with a corporate venture arm. But if we look at over the last 4 weeks, I literally have met 4 people here in Silicon Valley alone who are starting companies, startup companies, early stage, who are looking into a sub-flavor of generative AI. And we learned this morning also from Nestor from Stanford HAI that training a model like ChatGPT for a big corporation costs you millions and millions of dollars, which nobody really can afford. So everybody's looking at a little bit of a subset. But in general, let me read one of the other questions. Is generative AI a bubble or really transforming the world like the internet and smartphone did? And as you address these questions, I would like to not just dive into the generative AI, because it's in my opinion, at least, it's an overhyped kind of a term because there's so many other flavors of AI. So yes, we all confirmed here that we are in a hype cycle, but I think the hype cycle is, I would say, accelerated by the introduction of ChatGPT, because now it's visible to everybody. It's like in 1996, 1994, when Mosaic came out, and all of a sudden we were all internet companies and we had a .com in behind us and we were all expert on internet, and now everybody's an expert on AI. So rephrasing the question, are we in a bubble? Is generative AI something that is overhyped right now? And if so, what is the real flavor of AI that really changes the world from a practical perspective that you would invest in?
I think it's definitely overhyped, but I think it's also transforming the world, like the internet did as well. I mean, you mentioned it, right? There was a lot of a bubble in the early 2000s, in the late 90s, but of course, some real stuff survived, and we cannot think about a world without the internet anymore. And I think that will be the same in a couple of years. We cannot think about a world without responsible AI anymore. And generative AI is, I think, but it's a very, very strong accelerator, because I think Eva Maria talked about no code, low code. For me, like this large language models and this gigantic models that are very expensive and trade on the internet are a very sophisticated user interface to some extent. And this very nice sophisticated user interface enables other, I think more, serious enterprise related solutions to develop faster. Regular people can probably, develop an AI model, can maybe even train it, and can deploy it much, much easier than when we talked about machine learning AI 5 years ago. Everyone was talking about a lack of data scientists. Maybe generative AI can actually help to get over this lack of talent. On the other hand, you need new talent, right, to program the new AI. But I think in many cases, it's a very, very beautiful and a very powerful user interface, and also taking away a lot of fear, because regular people can do many more things much easier.
Agree, 100%. Anybody else wants to comment on the question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll comment. I think that the promise is amazing. It's fantastic. I mean, I want to drink of that Kool-Aid as well. But I think that the caveats for me are just incredibly important. The internet is just a communication protocol. That's all it was ever meant to be. It's TCP/IP based, right? So it was never meant to be about security or privacy or any of these other things that we are really finding to be insurmountably important. I mean, they're just incredibly important, right? And so as we move forward into the future, we can't just build on Web2 constructs, which are really only about communication. They don't really take into account all the other things that we need at this point in time. So I think that this is the opportunity as well as the challenge. There are many deficiencies in the large language models existing today. I urge you to take a look at SingularityNet's Zarka LLM, which is a truly decentralized LLM, which really looks at how do we correct a lot of the failings that we have in Web2 based or large language models that are Web2 based. Again, the quality, integrity, completeness, inclusivity of that data is absolutely critically important as we move into the future. Otherwise, we're building things and potentially, and I agree that technology should be useful. It should have a UI that is really easy to use, no code, all of that. Absolutely, the user experience. I think delivering that experience is really important. But that foundation is I can't be passionate enough to deliver that foundation is really something we ought to take care of. Otherwise, we're going to have a whole host of unintended consequences. And if you think that these unintended consequences are isolated or in a vacuum, they're not. They quickly proliferate upon themselves. Gen AI has that capability of generating upon itself. And that's why we have some of these caveats, these challenges that we're seeing. And if we don't fix it foundationally, I'm worried that we'll wake up 5 years, 10 years into the future saying, oh my God, what just happened?
Thank you very much. Rashmi and Eva Maria, maybe based on what we just heard, what are the kind of startup technologies that you would like to see that you either haven't seen enough or it's not good enough, that you believe there is a use case, there is a need out there that you would actually write a check to?
Yeah, from our standpoint, I would say, going back to your previous question a bit as well, if you ask any investor that's investing in AI or generative AI, I think the unanimous answer is it is overhyped. And that's pretty obvious from the size of the rounds, the valuations of these rounds, companies coming off the gate at a seed round, raising at $500 million. I think we're probably even more optimistic about how big these companies can grow than what we were back in 2021 in certain ways. But at the same time, I think in terms of where we'd be really excited to see true innovation come through is solving those pain points that are very specific to, again, the focus that we have on the enterprise side. So I'm going to kind of stay on that, but there's obviously a lot to do on the consumer side as well. On the enterprise side, solving those true pain points, I think the initial wave of companies that we have seen a lot of focus obviously came out of the OpenAI kind of a world where it was ask any question of the internet that you want to, have it summarize documents if you upload any structured or unstructured documents to it, create images or create a voice, very B2C kind of applications. On the enterprise side, I would say the early wave that we're seeing fall a lot into that productivity and collaboration bucket, where it's around help me draft an email, help me write sales content, marketing content, help me sync up calendars, which honestly, I worry about the ability for startups to truly become large independent companies in this category, given that this is a space that the tech giants like the Microsofts and the Googles are coming in pretty aggressively. And given the distribution that they already have with their platforms, like Microsoft announced they're integrating Copilot with Word and PowerPoint, with Outlook. Google's doing the same across all of their assets, including their storage assets as well. I think that the startups are really going to struggle to compete against the distribution network that the tech giants have on these very horizontal applications that, again, if you're a startup, all you have is an OpenAI shim around something. You really can't compete against what these large companies are going to go after. But the space that could be very interesting is on those vertical applications. Eva Maria talked about some of the applications on the healthcare side. I think on the drug discovery side, as an example, there's great ways to bring together the domain expertise that startups have in building models that can be highly contextualized for this use case, and then selling to or partnering with the pharma companies to get access to the data sets and create something that can be truly transformational and helping reduce the time that it takes to test out new compounds or leverage the models to help reduce that time to take a drug out to market. Same on the financial services side. Again, if we bring in the ability to match the data sets that enterprises have with the ability for startups to create something that can help them create models to help on loan origination, fraud, KYC, AML, I think that can be truly transformational. So that's something that we're excited about. I would love to see more of that, is what would be those true needle-moving impacts that we can have on those industry, enterprise, sector-based use cases.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, before we take just some limited questions from the audience, Eva Maria, what is your thought about this?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of really, really great points have already been made. So I'll keep it somewhat short. But what I find so fascinating about generative AI and AI in general is that, you know, the conventional business model of a creator and essentially a customer, that is now over, because the customer has become the creator and vice versa. So we're really looking at a different type of industry going forward. So I personally find startups and innovations interesting that make exactly that pathway easier, so that the creator can create more easily in the Gen AI space. So specifically, that means for me, MLOps, so machine learning operations. We talked about this a little bit already on this panel. So making sure that that is something that is available to everyone using and creating in Gen AI. The second piece is transparency. So really making it more transparent and easy to understand how those models and LLMs are being used. And then the third one is education. We need highly educated users who are also creators, as mentioned earlier. So startups that are really addressing those three core fundamental challenges that are already existing and will continue to grow and exist is something that I am personally very interested in. And just really briefly, to your previous question, is it overhyped? Absolutely. Is it here to stay? Absolutely, even more so.
That's a nice summary, and I 100% agree with you. Thank you very much. So we are a little bit tight on time, but there are many questions I was informed in the queue. We have a few more minutes left, and I will pick just the top 2 questions, or maybe just one. And I would like one of you to just address it. So please, Sonia, if you have a question, please share.
Yes, I think the very relevant question for our panelists, how can we empower women in academia or even in the corporate world in order to truly have gender diversity in AI? From Simone Marikit.
Thank you for the question. We obviously have 4 women here on the panel. At the same time, in half an hour, we have an entire Remarkable Woman in AI session as well. But if one of you here wants to take on that question, please feel free.
I'll jump in. I'm, not only a top 100 women of the future, but I'm also helping to support the actual project. The idea is that we do need to see more women in leadership, visibly out there. Women diversity in general is going to be a central, critical component to building a better future. And we do absolutely need it to be inclusive. It's interesting to talk about, people call women a minority. We're actually not a minority at all. So, when I hear that we're a minority group, I think that is statistically false, right? That we are not a minority, yet we are considered this marginalized or minority group. And while we are underrepresented, we are certainly not a minority. So I know that, many organizations that I'm in touch with, and I'm happy to put anybody in touch with these organizations, are really focused on putting the spotlight on the great role that women are going to need to play for the future. Certainly by the year 2030, I think we're going to be at nearly 80% purchasing power worldwide. So I know that, from our influence worldwide, we absolutely need to be the developers of the future. We absolutely need to have the female perspective included in creating this more inclusive tomorrow.
One more question. Just a short.
Sure. One more. So the next question is when do we expect Web3 to play a more active role in tech and the network market? From Ashish Amand.
I guess that's sort of directed to me. I don't know if it's West, but I'm glad to have anybody else respond to that.
Well, on this panel, you know what? Actually, tomorrow we have an entire day.
Yeah, we do have. Yeah, I wonder whether we can maybe table that, because stay tuned for the keynote tomorrow, because there's going to be a lot to unpack there.
Exactly. Let's have one other question, an AI-related question or a general question.
Yep.
Tomorrow is the big day for Web3.
Perfect. We'll save that for tomorrow. So the next question is, how can we use AI to understand and develop guardrails for governance and regulations? From Bo Dalby.
Ooh. Who wants to take that with a brief answer? Yvonne?
I have to think about that.
Okay. Quick, somebody.
I'll just say, yeah, decentralization is going to be key for that. That is what Web3 is specifically designed to do, is governance and decentralized frameworks as guardrails. So that's just again, stay tuned for a really exciting day tomorrow on this very topic.
And
all right, so tomorrow is Eva Maria, please go ahead.
Just one quick thought from my end on this topic. It needs to be application-based guardrails and application-based regulation. I think one of the biggest issues we have with regulation is that it's a blanket or umbrella approach. So leveraging AI to make sure it is very much fine-tuned to that specific application, I think that's the way forward here.
Excellent. With that, right on time, I very much appreciate all you speakers. Yvonne, thank you very much for being here in person. I really appreciate that. And with that, this session is concluded, and we are going to move to the next one. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.